If you've never lived through a mountain winter, here's what no brochure tells you. Snow doesn't fall, it accumulates history. Storm after storm, each layer stacks on the last powder, over crust, over facets, over melt-free slabs, until the whole slope looks harmless and almond soft. Then the sun shifts, or a skier crosses the wrong line, or a whisper of wind nudges the cornice, and the entire hillside remembers everything at once. In avalanche work, we call that buried trouble a weak layer. My marriage had one. I just didn't dig a pit to find it until too late. My name is Aaron. I'm 38 and work as an avalanche forecaster for a small resort town, not the famous one, the one that services the people who can't get a reservation at the famous one. The town is a spine of weathered buildings against a river that pretends it's asleep all winter. I spend my days reading sky maps, measuring snow crystals under a hand lens, and telling people who don't want to listen where not to go. My wife, Lena, ran a café the size of a warm glove, the kind of place where all the mugs are chipped on purpose, and the pastries look like they've been told they're beautiful and decided to believe it. In summer, she hung planters. In winter, she ran a line of boots along the radiator like a parade of small, exhausted animals. We married young by mountain standards, 27 for me, 24 for her, after a shoulder season where it rained every afternoon and the town smelled like wet pine. We wanted the same humility from life, enough money to pay our bills without having to pretend we were owed anything, a cabin close enough to the mountain that storms sounded like a freight train, a kid maybe, if luck allowed. Luck is polite until it isn't. 2 winters ago, we lost a pregnancy at 12 weeks. Lena bled on the bathroom floor while I told the paramedics what they could already see. She squeezed my hand so hard I felt it in my molars. Afterward, everyone brought casseroles and the universe sent a shamelessly blue sky for a week straight. The doctor said the word common like it was an apology. We did what grief makes you do when you're not ready to call it grief. We got very busy at not breaking. I threw myself into work. Snow is a language if you learn its grammar, and the mountain rewarded my attention with puzzles I could solve. Weak over strong, tension over friction, load over structure. Lena grew silent around the edges, then louder about the cafe. She changed the beans, repainted the wall behind the register, a yellow so bright I had to squint. We held hands in bed and fell asleep at different times, even when our bodies were right there. The winter this confession belongs to started early, a October dump that smothered the last gold in the aspens, like someone put the season to bed before it finished its sentence. By Thanksgiving, tourists arrived in their rented jackets, clumsy and red-cheeked. We smiled at them and waited for January when the town belongs to the people who live there. The first sign that something had shifted wasn't a phone or a lipstick or an unfamiliar smell. It was a map, or rather the absence of one. Every morning I leave a hazard map on the cafe counter when I grab a thermos and a muffin, a scribble of colored zones, notes on wind slabs, a cartoon of me reminding Jake, our friend who skis out of bounds like Faith, is a helmet to stop being a moron. Lena keeps them all, stacks them in a binder like she's building an atlas of the season we're surviving. The maps are placeholders for a thing we both know. I could not come back someday, and these would be the last pieces of my handwriting. One Tuesday in December, the binder was gone. "Where's my seasonal anthology?" I joked, shaking snow from my hat. Lena looked up from the pastry case. "I took it home," she said too fast, "so I can organize." "You organizing paper?" I teased. Lena has a mind like a drawer where you put things you'll need in 6 months and then find again exactly when you need them. Physical organization isn't her sport. She smiled, but it arrived late. "I'm learning," she said. I kissed her knuckles the way you kiss a superstition and went to work. 2 days later, the Newtown doctor introduced himself on the morning net. The old doctor retired to Arizona to play golf with his own mortality, and the clinic hired someone who can do mountain medicine and smile on command. "Dr. Cole Harrington," the voice said through the radio, low and unhurried, like a man who learned to calm people by making sentences walk. He requested our avalanche bulletins for patient education. It made me like him immediately and resent the fact. Danger is my language, and he spoke mine. By Christmas, the storms hit the valley like a drumbeat. People use powder day like a charm, but forecasters here storm slab. I dug pits until my hands went numb and told the resort to bomb the ridgeline like a holiday fireworks display. Lena extended hours at the cafe. She started wearing a new blue beanie that made her eyes look like the lake before it froze. On New Year's Eve, we did what we do every year. Worked late, locked up, lit sparklers on the back stoop, and watched the town pretend time isn't made up. Between the fireworks and the echo of them off the mountain, we kissed, quick and public. When we went inside, someone had left a card under the door. No return address. Inside, a line drawing of a snowflake and a note in clean, careful handwriting. Thank you for keeping this town warm. See. I turned it over, like warmth could hide a second message. Lena tucked it into the tip jar with a shrug, so practiced it had to be rehearsed. Probably one of the ER nurses, she said. They live on espresso. I didn't know nurses signed with an initial that looks like it flosses twice a day, I said, aiming for light and missing. She didn't bite. She kissed me and swayed my hand like we were happy. We were. And also, the ground shifted a millimeter. January is a stern parent. The cold went brittle. Locals grew mean about parking. Jake skied a line I told him not to, tweaked his knee, and apologized in a way only men apologize. You were right, he said, eyes elsewhere. Meaning, it won't change me. Work, caffeine, sleep, repeat. Lena started waking in the night like the house had said her name. Nightly inventory, she joked. Her smiles had periods after them. The next sign was a smell, and I hate cliches, but there it is. Not perfume. Something less conversational, sterile, and vaguely citrus, like the soap clinics use because they want your skin to feel like it could be a new thing. It clung to Lena's scarf when she came home after closing. Did the cafe start doing minor surgery? I asked, inhaling her, like a man trying to prove something to himself. She laughed, for real this time. A kid cut his hand on a broken plate, she said, eyes soft with a story I wasn't there for. I took him to the clinic. They glued it. Cole Dr. Harrington knows how to talk to parents. Everyone in this town knows how to talk to parents, I said. We all avoid the grief word until we can't. Not like that, she said. He tells them the danger without making them feel stupid for being afraid. I made a sound like I agreed. I didn't. I made a file folder in my chest and labeled it Cole. Here's the thing about being trained to read instability. You start seeing it everywhere. A cornice above a gully. A social media post that spirals an apology. Your wife's posture when a name enters the room like a stray dog that expects dinner. I didn't check her phone. I didn't follow her. I am not a detective. I'm a weather reader. I waited for pressure to load. It came on a Tuesday with a sky so clear the moon was visible at noon. I was doing routine control work near the boundary of slope I know like the back of my gloved hand. Lena texted me a photo at 10:12 a.m., a latte with a foam heart that looked like it had survived something. For your binder, she wrote. My binder is at home. I typed, then deleted. I sent a snow emoji. She responded with a blue heart she rarely uses. At 12:17, the radio cracked with a tone I hate. The clinic's emergency channel requesting ski patrol support. 2 snowshoers overdue. Last seen on a popular trail that looks friendly until it remembers ice is a decision. Cole's voice came through calm enough to lower a room's blood pressure. He asked if patrol could sweep the drainage if we had resources. We always don't and always do. I joined the team because I needed movement to shut my brain up. Halfway into the search, my boot hit a buried branch, and I went down hard enough to taste pennies. Swearing is warmer than fleece for about a minute. When I looked up, I saw 2 sets of fresh tracks diverging off the main trail into a stand of spruce. Snow had fallen since the last hikers. The divergence was new. Got something, I radioed. 2 sets, headed southeast toward the ravine. Copy, patrol said. We're sending... A second voice cut in. Lena. My wife owns a radio for storm emergencies and boomerangs lost skiers back to the cafe with hot chocolate. Aaron, she said too loud. Are you okay? I stared at the handset like it had said my private name out loud in church. I'm fine, I said. Go off air unless you have resources. I'm at the clinic, she said. Then silence like someone had taken the world's volume and rolled it gently down. You cannot run in snowshoes, but I tried. I followed the tracks through the trees until they ended in an arrogant open slope that had been teased by wind into a smooth, lethal sheet. Overhead, the sun played its trick, a pretty light that unstitches snow just enough. Along the edge of the slope, another set of tracks. Careful, testing. I radioed. Don't love this angle, I said. Copy, someone said. Then Cole's voice. We've got the overdue snowshoers checked in. They called in from a friend's cabin. False alarm. He paused, enough air in the sentence to fill a chest. Aaron, where are you exactly? I gave coordinates like a man telling the truth because it's simpler. He said, pull back if you're solo. The tone wasn't an order. It was a man who knew what a widow looks like. On my way down, I saw them. Far below on the clinic's side porch, where employees take breaks to pretend they don't bring people's pain home. Lena and Cole. He handed her something, a white envelope or a folded printout. She took it like it was hot. He reached out and touched the back of her hand, the way doctors do to tell a body it's there. She didn't flinch. She stood, held, breathed. Then she put the paper in her beanie, like she needed the information close to the place she thinks with. I came home with a story ready for a fight. I didn't use it. Lena met me at the door with both hands and a face I hadn't seen since our wedding opened, terrified, in love with the world for what it might do next. We need to talk, she said. The weak layer failed. I'm seeing someone, she said. The words landed like snow blocks cut by a saw. Clean edges. It's new. It shouldn't have happened. I'm sorry. Who? I asked, already knowing, because smart men always arrive late to their own answers. Cole. I sat. The chair complained like a truth. How long? I said. I wanted it to be a week. A mistake you can name and place like a stubborn low-pressure system that will pass if you just wait. I want it to be anything but what it was. Since November, she said. Not physically at first. She stared at our stove like it had the rest of her sentence. I went to the clinic after that kid cut his hand and stayed to ask about the thing we lost. He talked to me like it happened to him without pretending it did. He said things that made space where I didn't have any. And now? I asked, because fairness isn't a value. It's a weapon if you wield it in a room that hurts. She nodded once, a fragile hinge. Now, yes. Do you love him? I said, because you can amputate without anesthesia if you move fast. She didn't answer the way I expected. She said, I love me when I am with him. Then she looked at me in a way I will always remember, because it was both apology and indictment. I haven't loved me anywhere for a long time. I wanted to say I loved her in all her versions. I wanted to say I had been working hard so she didn't have to hold the weight. I wanted to say a dozen things about snow and systems and how people like me survive by forecasting worst-case scenarios so the world can be kinder than our models. I said none of that. I said, I wish you had told me before it became a noun. We slept in the same bed that night because people do strangest things when there's no correct one. Her back to me felt like a cliff I wanted to ski off just to see if falling or flying would feel like the same verb. In the morning, I did the only thing my brain knows how to do when chaos enters. I made a plan. We would take space. I would move into the forecaster's bunk room for a while. We would tell no one until we were sure of the shape of what we were saying. We would not make any permanent decisions in a storm. She agreed, grateful and wrecked, and too kind to be the villain I needed. Then the mountain made a choice for us. A storm rolled in from the west like a country arriving. The radar looked like a painter who didn't believe in white. Snow fell without pause for 48 hours. The wind did its shepherd thing and moved it where it wanted. By day 3, we had a hazard level we reserved for sermons and funerals. Patrol bombed the ridge until the blast felt personal. Slides ran to ground like confessions. I put my phone on airplane mode between updates so I wouldn't break my own head reading nothing. On the 3rd night, the power went. The town has learned its choreography: generators, candles, neighbors knocking, a tally of who needs insulin and who needs to be talked out of an ill-advised sled to the bar. I was at the bunkhouse with a handful of forecasters who think humor is the same as oxygen. At 2:11 a.m., someone banged on the door the way weather does when it remembers your address. Jake, breath like smoke, eyes like borrowed headlights. There's been a slide off Devil's Comb, he said, naming a chute that has killed more hubris than I can count. 2 caught, 1 partial, 1 full. Clinic says their doc's out. They need hands. Clinic says their doc's out. The sentence was a hook. I did not want my heart to know what it knew. We assembled a team like a body remembers how to run. Skin track, headlamps, a string of human intentions moving into a wilderness that doesn't care. The wind tried to rename our faces. We reached the debris field, and it was ugly the way truth is. Huge blocks, chunky and hard, not the powder the films sell. We split into probe lines and moved like a centipede with a prayer. First strike came quick, shallow. We dug like men who understand the math. A woman emerged, conscious and screaming in a way that meant she was still here. She couldn't feel her legs but felt everything else and told us about the friend she last saw to her right. We shoveled a trench direction she indicated and hit wood, metal, fabric, things that belonged to a day and not a night. Second strike was deeper. The transceiver signal did its insistent beep, and the snow around my face smelled like someone else's fear. We dug to a face, male, unconscious, not breathing. I cleared the airway. Snow is a liar in lungs. It melts and becomes something you can't undo with hands. We ventilated. He coughed and found us. Coal. Of course it was. The mountain has humor we don't sign up for. For a second, one human, filthy second. I felt a small, mean satisfaction bloom under my ribs. Then it died because mortality is a solvent. We packaged, we sledded, we navigated terrain that hates sleds. I fell once and bit my tongue hard enough to taste old pennies again. Back at the clinic, the generator hummed like a broken promise. Nurses moved like competence. They took the woman, they took Cole. He was cyanotic gray that makes you want to apologize to God for every time you said you didn't believe. They asked me to help because hands are hands. I helped. I held a bag valve like I was trying to inflate a balloon into the shape of my life. They stabilized him. Lena arrived in the doorway the way you arrive at a church, brave because you have to pretend. When she saw him, something in her body made a sound I can't write. She didn't look for me first. She looked for his breath. I'm not proud of this next part, and I am both. I backed out, sat on the clinic floor, fogged a square of glass with my mouth, and tried to count backwards from a number I couldn't remember. Jake sat beside me like a dog that won't leave you at a grave. Neither of us spoke. A nurse handed me a cup of water like I had done something to earn it. Lena found me later. She knelt the way people kneel when they need the world to be closer to the body. He's alive, she said. They're moving him to a bigger hospital in the morning when the road clears. If it clears. I nodded. The road might as well have been on Mars. She put her hand on my knee like we were back at the café, like nothing had happened in the history between us. I'm sorry, she said, and it was so inadequate and so absolute I let it land and didn't punish it. Don't be, I said, and meant it in 10 contradictory ways. We sat there until the generator coughed and threatened to confess it was tired. When she stood, she asked, "Can you take me home?" It wasn't a love request, it was a human one. At our cabin, the power was still out. We lit the fat candle her aunt made us as a wedding gift, vanilla and cedar, a scent that tells the room to pretend it's a memory. We sat at the table like people do when they have nothing left to bring to the court. I won't ask you to forgive me, she said. I won't pretend it's a storm that will pass. What will you ask? My voice sounded like someone else's man. To tell you the truth without arranging it, she said, shaking like people shake after they've been brave for too long. I didn't go looking for him. I went looking for the girl I was before this town handed me casseroles and told me to call what happened. Common Uram. He made me feel like the version of me who could have stayed pregnant was still in the room. That's not his fault, it's mine. I took comfort and turned it into a door. And me? I asked. What did you turn me into? A forecast, she said, not unkindly. A thing that prepared me for bad, that sometimes never came. It should have been a cruelty. It was the kindest description anyone has ever given me that almost made me hate myself. We didn't sleep. Dawn arrived like a rumor. The plows finally bullied the road into the shape of a road. The ambulance took Cole to the city. Lena packed a bag with the care of a person who believes folding is a form of love. She touched my face like women do when they believe in both mercy and endings. "I love you," she said. That never stopped. It just hid under the wrong layer. "Go," I said, because there's a difference between being generous and wanting to be the kind of person who is. I did not watch from the window. I cleaned the kitchen like I could wipe a life back into the counter. For 3 days, the mountain rested. The town tried jokes on, like coats. People asked me if I'd heard about the clinic hero who got buried and didn't die, and I nodded like men nod at subjects that make them dizzy. Lena texted updates that read like weather reports. Stable. Tests. Vitals. No smile emojis. No blue hearts. Here's where most of the versions of this story choose a team. In some of them, I storm the hospital and make a speech about boundaries. In others, I tell her to pack and leave and invent a new personality that drinks whiskey with steady hands and never thinks about crystal facets under a hand lens. The true version is smaller and, in my opinion, braver. I waited until the roads were safe, drove to the hospital, brought a bag of oranges because vitamin C is something we pretend is a spell, and sat with Lena while she sat with a man who might be the person who saved her life without touching it kindly. I didn't go into his room. That's the line I drew quietly, like a map margin. Lena came out every hour with news I didn't deserve and gave it anyway. He woke. He asked about the other patient. He cried the way men cry when their bodies are exhausted from refusal. On day 4, Lena looked at me like she was measuring where I ended, and she began. "I can't be married to 2 lives," she said. "I can't be married to a person I'm not brave with." "Then don't be," I said, and my voice didn't break because I was holding it like a fragile mug. We signed papers in spring when the snow went to ground and the river remembered speed. We sold the cabin to a couple who said things like soulful and meant views. I moved into a small rental above the gear shop where teenagers ask me for advice and then ignore it visibly. Lena gave the café to her manager for a price that was a kindness and a risk. She took a job at the hospital as a patient liaison. You'll want to know if she is with Cole. Yes. And also, it is not the ending you think. It is ordinary, which is its own miracle. What I do with my nights now is this. I walk to the edge of town where the river starts to be itself. I stand and listen to water eat snow it never consented to carry. I think about weak layers and how they aren't treachery. They are just places where the world failed to bond in the cold. I think about how my job is to forecast, not to command. I think about the time I felt that mean bloom in my chest on the slope, and how quick it died when I saw a human in my arms. I am not proud of my first impulse. I am proud of my second. Last week, Lena came by the gear shop to drop off a box I'd forgotten maps, thermoses, the binder I thought she'd moved to our house to organize. She'd actually been taking them to the clinic, showing new parents what winter looks like when you survive it together. You were careful with this town, she said, tapping the binder. Even when you were wrong about me, you were careful with the world. That matters. I wanted to say a brave, tender thing. I said, "Did you repaint the cafe?" The yellow was a choice. She laughed, the middle one, the one that lives between the bright and the polite. "They painted it blue," she said. "The new owner says it calms people." "Blue calms liars," I said automatically, and she rolled her eyes, which was a kindness too. Here is my confession. I was betrayed by my wife. She kissed someone else's mouth and then let him into the version of her life I thought had a door only I knew how to open. She also told me the truth when I didn't deserve it. She also refused to turn me into a villain when I made it easy to. Both can be true, both are. If you need a hero, pick someone else. If you need a story where the mountain punishes the right people and rewards loyalty like a punch card, I don't have it to sell you. What I have is a map. The day we signed the papers, Lena and I walked along the edge of the resort, where the ski runs look like someone combed the mountain. She stopped at a forecasting stake, the one I measure after storms, and pulled a small red flag from her pocket, the kind we stick in pits to remind us where the weak layer is. She planted it in the snow gently. "For us," she said, "so we remember where it failed, so we don't step there again and call it a surprise." Now on my hazard maps, the ones that make their way back to the cafe I don't own, and the hospital where Lena stands in hallways and shows people where their fear belongs. I add a tiny red dot at the bottom corner and write, small. You are here. It's not a warning. It's not forgiveness. It's a fact. And on days when the wind chooses a cruel angle and the snow slabs are loud with intention, I dig a pit, look down into the layers and say the names of the ones that didn't bond. Sun crust, facets, surface horror, loss, silence, relief. Then I back out, fill the hole, and mark the slope with flags so strangers who don't know our language won't pay our price. If this is a love story, it's not the kind you put on a mug. If it's a confession, it's late and honest. If it's a thriller, the twist is this: the avalanche didn't kill us. We did not get the future we plotted in bright colors across a shared kitchen table, but we did not bury each other under it either. Weak layers don't mean the mountain hates you. They mean the storm came fast and you are alive to read it. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you. It means a lot. New stories like this one are posted every single day, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss one. And if this story touched you, please give it a like. It really helps more people find our content.